being for our attendees. So we'll go ahead and get things started. So good afternoon, good morning, everyone, depending on where you're joining us from. Thank you so much for logging in for today's special Mountain Talk. My name is Bryce Neff. I am the Associate Director of College Affinity and Faculty Engagement with the Alumni Relations team here at Lehigh University. And I'm here very excited to present Professor Jodi Eichler-Levine. So before we kick things off, just a couple of housekeeping notes that I want to cover. The session today is going to be recorded, so if there is anyone that needs to drop off early and wants to look back on the recording afterwards, we will post it to the Alumni Relations YouTube page for later viewing, as well as sharing out with any other interested alumni who may have missed it today. If you have any questions throughout the presentation and for our Q&A section, please use the chat box at the bottom of the screen, and you can adjust the settings to be hosts and panelists to view the questions, or all everybody in the session to view it. If you set it to everybody can view it, then that kind of helps stir some other conversation and questions that other folks may not be thinking about. So please feel free to do so that way. So today we are going to be talking about the 40th anniversary of the Berman Center and A Year of Jews in the Arts by director Jodi Eichler-Levine. So Jodi is a professor of religious studies and serves as the Berman Professor of Jewish Civilization. Her work is located at the intersection of Jewish studies, religion in North America, literature, material culture, and gender studies. She holds a Ph.D. in religion from Columbia University and a BA in Near Eastern and Judaic studies from Brandeis University. Before coming to Lehigh, she spent 8 years as a professor of religious studies and women's and gender studies at the University of Wisconsin, Oshkosh. Professor Eichler-Levine is also the author of Painted Pomegranates and Needlepoint Rabbis, How Jews Craft Resilience and Create Community. Building upon 3 years of ethnography around the U.S., this book explores how everyday acts of creativity are a crucial part of making religious lives. So with that, I'm going to pass the reins to Professor Eichler-Levine to talk to us about the history of the Berman Center and some of the exciting things that they have coming up over the next couple of months. So Jodi, why don't you feel free to take us away?
Hi everyone. Good afternoon, morning, or whatever time of day it might be where you are. Thank you so much for joining us today. Fun fact, today is February 25th, 2025. 10 years ago today, I was interviewing for my job at Lehigh. So I was sort of walking around the hills, in my interview suit, getting ready to give my job talk. So it's very funny to be talking to you today about the Berman Center with 10 years of the Berman's 40 years under my belt. So I can talk to you about the 10 years I've been here and a little bit of research into the 30 years before that. So I'm delighted that you've joined us. I'm going to get my PowerPoint started so that we can have some images because life is always much more fun with pictures, or so my students say. Welcome to a little bit of a tour. So first I'll talk a little bit about where we've been, where we are, and perhaps during the question and answer period, we can talk about where we might be going, although I certainly am not a prognosticator of prognostications, unlike Punxsutawney Phil down the road elsewhere in Pennsylvania. So 40 years of the Berman Center for Jewish Studies. First of all, we are not precisely a place. We are the Berman Center for Jewish Studies, but where is that center? I did a little bit of historical research through our university archives, and I found this lovely piece from the Brown and White in 1989. Hidden on the third floor of McGinnis Hall, that's pictured at the top, in room 231, the Philip and Muriel Berman Center for Jewish Studies provides an outstanding resource for those wishing to take a closer look at Judaism. The Berman Center was founded in the 1984-1985 school year. I'll talk more about that in a second. And indeed, the Berman professors did make their home in McGinnis Hall. And if some of you are alums from the 1980s, 1990s, or all the way through, in fact, 2015, you probably do remember visiting your professors in McGinnis Hall. And today, McGinnis Hall is the home of our college and the home of our awesome administrative support staff. So shout out to everyone in our College Office of Interdisciplinary Programs and Research Centers. Both of those offices are still there. However, I am not speaking to you from McGinnis Hall. I'm speaking to you from Williams Hall. So there is no actual physical space that is called the Berman Center. We are a collection of people, research, students, ideas. Some of us are now up the hill in Williams Hall, which is pictured on the bottom, but we do still have the original plaque. So when there were some renovations in McGinnis Hall, one of our associate deans did save the original plaque, so we do still have it above some of our offices. A little bit more seriously, our history begins in 1984, and it would not be our history without the very important people seated at the center of this slide. Philip and Muriel Berman, who were philanthropists. She was an optometrist. He worked in many industries, including department stores and nursing homes and many other things. And they were truly dedicated to the Lehigh Valley Jewish community, to the arts throughout Eastern and Northeastern Pennsylvania, and to many other causes. And so they were the people who in 1984 helped to found the first chair in Jewish studies in the Lehigh Valley, and that was occupied by the professor on the right, Professor Lawrence Silberstein, the founding director of the center. This is a very selected history because I really just have 15 minutes to tell you about our past and our present. So this is not everyone who's ever been involved in the Berman Center, not even close. But the Bermans got everything started with first two chairs here, Professor Silberstein and Professor Chava Weissler, pictured at the bottom left. And then we had many other affiliated faculty. This is just a tiny selection. Professor Rosalind Weiss taught in our philosophy department, writer in residence Ruth Knaff-Osetin. And there were countless visiting professors throughout the years, dignitaries, a partnership with the Pontifical Institute in Rome. And so we're looking at 4 decades of courses, and this wasn't just a center at Lehigh. Most importantly, this was a center for the entire Lehigh Valley. So this also included and includes today one chair at Lafayette College, even though they are our arch rivals in Jewish studies, we are friends, and partnerships with other schools throughout Lehigh, our region. So I love to dig in our own in our archives. So here's a quick shout out. If you'd like to know more about the history of Philip and Muriel Berman, Lehigh University's special collections through our library and technology services have all of their papers, or at least a lot of these are physical papers. So researchers come work in our archives and learn more. And I'll share the link to this because it's a great capsule biography as well, if you'd like to learn more about the Bermans. And I want to say collecting history is a big part of our 40th anniversary celebration. More on that towards the end of the presentation. So what does all of this have to do with art? Obviously, art is a major part of all world civilizations. And the Bermans were particularly dedicated to the arts at Lehigh and elsewhere. If you've ever walked on the beautiful Lehigh campus, you've seen the sculpture, the temple, which is one of many sculptures donated by the Bermans that really proliferate around the Lehigh campus. It's actually my personal favorite, so that's why I chose it for the slideshow today. And it's also true that art has been a really major part of the research of the Berman Center over the years. So I have a few screenshots from our scanned collection of newsletters, so you can see the center growing throughout the late 1980s as new professors arrived at Lehigh, at Lafayette. Although there's not a formal Berman scholar at Muhlenberg, we've always worked closely with them. And then, of course, there was ritual as as many of our professors have been in religion studies or religion, culture, and society departments, you've had plenty of academic ritual. So I love to bring out the program from the installation ceremony for what was then called the Philip and Muriel Berman Chair of Judaica, when the first Jewish studies professor, Larry Silberstein, was officially installed as that first leader of Jewish studies. There was a ceremony. I love to take out the menu. And Larry and Chava, or Dr. Weissler and Dr. Silberstein, and many others who've worked here really worked on the arts. They worked on the literary arts, they worked on visual art, they worked on material culture. And so you can see here in this newsletter from 2003 that Impossible Images, Contemporary Art After the Holocaust was one of many, many volumes edited here as part of the Berman Center's research work, as one of many conferences that was held here with a lot of the biggest names really in Jewish studies coming here to talk about issues in the field. And I, in fact, definitely checked that book out of the library in graduate school. I don't have to check it out anymore because we have an extra copy here. So it's really lovely to see that studying art as well as supporting the production of art has always been a part of our history. This is another little tidbit from the installation of the first Berman chair. I think it's fun to notice that there was music. And there was actually an original composition based upon Jewish folk music motifs by Lehigh's professor, Paul Salerni of the music department. So I think it's always fun to really take a look at our institutional history and think about how it intersects with both our research and just the practice of community at Lehigh, which is so important. The Berman Center's also been an important place for speakers. Obviously, cultural programming has been part of our mandate throughout the last 40 years. And these are just three of literally dozens, well over 100 at this point, speakers that have been here over the last 40 years. On the left, Deborah Lipstadt, who is particularly famous for her scholarship on the Holocaust, and also has served in very high roles in the US government regarding anti-Semitism. At 25 years, the Berman Center welcomed Michael Chabon, the author of The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay. So both the literary arts, but someone writing about Judaism and comic books, a class I'm teaching right now. So we think about the contributions of Jews to American popular culture all the time here at the Berman Center. And on the right, author Dara Horn visited here in 2018, speaking about her book, Eternal Life. And she's really one of our really important Jewish authors of the present. And that is a very small sample. So who are we today and what are we up to today? These are some of our affiliated faculty right now. And here's a photograph from a visit from the eminent historian Jan Gross about a year ago. So you can see we are an interdisciplinary research center and an undergraduate minor. So we're not a department. What we are is professors who all have their homes in other departments and are in some way affiliated with the center. And some of us are full professors or tenured professors. Some are teaching assistant professors, so we vary in how we're appointed here. Dr. Noah Avram Barak teaches Hebrew, both here and at Lafayette, and is in modern languages and literature. You can see I'm me. I'm in the newly renamed Religion, Culture, and Society department. My colleague, Dr. Hartley Lachter, also is in Religion, Culture, and Society, and he occupies the chair originally held by Larry when the Berman Center was first founded. I occupy the Jewish Chair of Civilization, first occupied by Dr. Weissler. Dr. Nitzan Leibovich, my colleague in history, is in the Apter Chair of Holocaust and Ethical Studies. So he's over in the history department. And then Dr. Ben Wright is a distinguished university professor and an expert on Second Temple Judaism and early Christianity. I put RCS, but he's going to be mad if he watches the recording of this because he favors being called a professor of religion studies. And he'll be retiring at the end of this year, about which we are in denial. So what do we do as both a research center and an undergraduate minor? First of all, we produce new research. You can see on the left there the covers of 4 of our recent books, and those 2 on the right just came out this year, so they are hot off the presses. One came out in the fall, one came out in December or January, and they're all within the last 4 to 5 years. Obviously, that's one of our missions here at the university, is to create new knowledge. Another big thing we do is create events and international seminars. So we are a place about conversations, learning, and the creation of new knowledge do not happen in isolation. They happen when people can talk to one another and interact. And so you can see here we've had partnerships with the Oxford Center for Hebrew and Jewish Studies in England. We've sponsored seminars in Lecce, Italy, which is what you can see at the bottom there. We'll be hosting a seminar in Bologna this summer. We've worked with institutions in Germany. So both in the Lehigh Valley and throughout the world, we are hosting seminars. And most importantly, of course, we are here to educate our students. So you can see there on the top is actually my Beyond Bagels, Jews and Food class, making some decorations to go with one of our meals. A wonderful event in the middle, Dr. Jacqueline Nichols, who, sorry, I don't actually think she's a professor. The artist, Jacqueline Nichols, what she is an amazing modern artist who basically pioneered drawing a page of a Talmud a day. I can talk more about that later if you'd like. And we had an art exhibit of her work here a couple of years ago. That's our students visiting her art. And the author Michael Twitty at the bottom. So we are a Jewish Studies minor. We offer several courses every semester in a host of different departments, and that is a major part of our mission. So a few recent events. This one leads up to our current year. Last year, we had a major event where we hosted author Michael Twitty, National Jewish Book Award-winning author of Kosher Soul, and the James Beard Award-winning author of The Cooking Gene. We had a huge turnout, well over 100 members of the campus and community, and a great example of how we can really bridge campus, community, people who are interested in Jewish studies, people who are interested in food, and also really talk about global Jewish diversity, since one of his missions is to think about the global Jewish diversity of Jewish food and foodways. And so that was just a wonderful event. And of course, this year, to celebrate our 40th anniversary, we are focusing on the arts because there is no time period in Jewish history that does not intersect with creativity and the arts in some way. And so to kick off the year, last fall, Indian-born Jewish American artist Siona Benjamin had a residency here in September. And it was just a wonderful 2 weeks of events. You'll hear me say the word interdisciplinary a lot, partnering with other departments on campus, theater, art, architecture, and design, global studies, and a host of others was really important to us. So she talked about the history of Jews in India. On the bottom here, she's doing a painting demonstration for a theater design class. We had outdoor events with chalk painting. We had indoor events, and we even partnered with our Center for Entrepreneurship, the Baker Institute, because she also runs a small business. And so there's ways that Jewish studies really touches every part of the university. Just last week, Dr. Yossi Chayes was here. He's an expert on Kabbalah or Jewish mysticism, and he was talking about the Ilanot project. These are manuscripts. As you can see, they're massive scrolls. Some of them are actually larger in real life, that are essentially maps of medieval Jewish mystical schematics of the Godhead, of how people thought about the divine in medieval and early modern Jewish mysticism. And so we had just an amazing event where our team essentially helped to create these posters of the manuscripts that he's done digital humanities work on. And so students were able to really walk around and see what these look like up close. And it was just a terrific event that really brought together material culture, art, and the humanities. And then the last couple things, why Jewish studies? Obviously, we live in a world with a lot of different kinds of people. There are not a lot of Jews in the world. Jews are a little bit less than 2% of the US population and a much smaller percent of the world population. But I maintain and will always maintain that Jewish studies is for everyone because it's important that we prepare students to live in a diverse world and produce research that really changes how everyone sees the world. Jewish studies is interdisciplinary. It's history, it's sociology, it's art. It touches upon every other field because Jews have, as a diaspora people, lived in so many different places, and because we're talking about such a long span of world history. And so Jewish studies touches in some way upon most other fields, and that's part of why it's for everyone. And just a quick preview because I think I'm almost out of time for my portion of the program. And then we'll really have some conversation coming in April to finish up. We have we have one more event after this, but like our big culminating concert is Pharaoh's Daughter. They'll be here on April 10th, 2025 at 7:30 p.m. That's a big concert. We're co-presenting with Zollner Arts Center, and there'll be dessert afterwards. So come ready for dessert. And as long as we're talking about history, as I was digging through old Berman Center newsletters, getting ready for today's talk, I discovered that they have been here before, but not since 2007. So Basia Schechter, who's their amazing, who has an indie career and also runs this band, she grew up in a very traditional household in Brooklyn, and then went off and sort of discovered world Jewish music. And so she combines Hasidic traditional tunes with Jewish world music from all over the globe. And so she was here in 2007 as part of a themed semester on diaspora. So it will be really exciting to have them return. Actually, since 2007, they've gotten a much higher profile, and Leonard Cohen, of blessed memory before he died, said how great their music was. So we're really excited to have them here. And if you are able to screenshot, and we'll also share links to this in the chat, these are the remaining events in our year of Jews in the Arts. So really important, March 24th to 26th, we'll be having about 20 scholars from all over the world here, some of the best scholars of antiquity that my colleague, Dr. Ben Wright, has organized to come here to talk about early Judaism and how we study it in the 21st century. That's going to be amazing. It's open to the public. Pharaoh's Daughter will be here April 10th. And then Israeli artist and filmmaker Ro'eh Rosen will be here April 29th through 30th. He has shown all over the world at the Tate Modern and other places. So really a world-renowned artist. So we've got a lot happening. And I will stop talking at you now because that's pedagogically terrible. And thank you so much. I look forward to having some conversational time.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jodi. There was a lot about the Berman Center that I was very unaware of, so thank you for that high-level overview. And a couple of questions that I have to kind of kick us off. For anyone who's curious, feel free to throw those questions down in the chat. Mark, thank you for adding the link to Homo Temporalis. So for anyone who's curious on any of the new research that's come from the Berman Center, or the new books that's come from the Berman Center, Mark shared a link to one of those titles. So Jodi, some of the questions that I have for you, I'm super curious about a couple of the classes that you had between the comic books and culture and the bagels course. Those are two things that are right up my alley. So in thinking about, those classes and some of the concepts that you teach, what are some of the contributions that Jews and Jewish Americans have, provided to American pop culture, and maybe some avenues that people are either unaware about or just, kind of overlook perhaps?
Yeah, there is almost no part of American popular culture that is untouched by Jewish Americans. So, right this semester, I'm teaching that Judaism and comic books class. So, people who are watching might already know that, for example, Superman was created by Jews, and Jews were in the comic book industry in part because it was seen as really disreputable. It was suspect in the 1930s, and so it was something they could get into, whereas Madison Avenue wasn't letting them in to the advertising industry. I also teach a class on Jews and the Broadway musical, and so we're really talking about the fact that, God Bless America, very patriotic song written by Irving Berlin, a Jewish immigrant from Russia/Ukraine. And so I show that song with my students, and we don't get the form of the Broadway musical without contributions also from African Americans, from jazz. You can't overlook a lot of different streams that come into that cultural creation. But that's really important. So yeah, and then colleagues in other departments also teach a lot of cultural classes. So yeah, Broadway, um, comic books, food, and really just about anything. It's hard not to find a connection.
Wonderful. And then another question that I had that kind of leads into Stu's question as well. Thinking about the history of the Burmans, and as you mentioned earlier in the presentation, their influence on the arts and colleges and universities kind of around Pennsylvania, between Lafayette, the art gallery down at Ursinus College. They have connections to the University of Pennsylvania, and another number of other institutions here in the Lehigh Valley. So what are some of the partnerships and some of the collaborations that the center has done with other institutions, perhaps other endowed chairs, and what does that history of connection and collaboration look like over the years?
Yeah, we've had a lot of partners, both regionally and internationally. So for example, so um, so you've got, and I'm looking back and forth between the question and what you were asking. And so we've got the fact that the the Bermans gave hugely to the arts. We've had partnerships. We've had with Lafayette and Muhlenberg, and we've had lots of workshops here, bringing people from throughout the region. We've had our partners are international, and I noticed Stu asked in particular about Israel. So in the photo from Oxford, when we ran our Oxford seminar for 8 years, one of our co-conveners, Dr. Adam Furziger, is from Bar-Ilan University, and so that those meetings were held in England precisely because it was you could sort of triangulate between scholars from Israel, scholars from the US, and scholars from Europe, and that became the easiest place to put everyone in terms of the flights was actually the UK. So we are partnering with scholars all over the world. And then we continue to have close relationships. Also, I should mention one of my own mentors, Dr. Laura Levitt, who's at Temple University, was up here for a lot of these early Berman conferences, back 10, 20 years ago. And so we've also been close with the Philadelphia schools, with Penn, with Temple, and with the New York schools, with NYU. And so there's been a lot of connections that way as well. So there's quite a lot.
Wonderful. And then to kind of add to the second part of Stu's question, and kind of thinking about how the landscape of higher ed and students and student interests have changed over the last 40 years or so, how has the Berman Center adapted and adjusted the way it's having conversations around topics like anti-Semitism and other contemporary issues that are happening, in our current world?
Yeah, so my colleague, Dr. Hartley Lachter, is quite literally an expert on this. And so he teaches a class on the history of anti-Semitism every single year. And that's obviously a really important topic right now. It's always a very well subscribed class. And so let's not a new issue. And, that continues to be an area where students are grappling. And what we can do as an academic Jewish Studies Center is really teach students about that history. So it's most dedicated in that course where he's going all the way, most heavily in the medieval period, but also looking at antiquity and looking at the modern period. But for me, for example, I'm a scholar of American Judaism, so I can't teach the history of Jews in America without talking about, say, nativism and anti-Semitism in America in the 1920s and 30s. You can't do the history without that. So it's certainly present. It's certainly a part of what we teach. And that's been true really for as long as I've been teaching. Of course, it remains, it remains a particularly sensitive issue at the moment. And even in Jews and Food, it comes up. There's a wonderful article by my colleague Jordan Rosenbaum at the University of Wisconsin-Madison about the history of Jews and garlic, which in some ways is fun and in some ways actually connects to some anti-Semitic stereotypes. So I can recommend that if you'd like to learn more.
Wonderful. And then Stu also is curious, do you do any partnerships with Hillel or Shabbat at Lehigh?
So Chabad is not officially a Lehigh organization, and there is a Chabad club at Lehigh, but they are technically not a Lehigh organization. Hillel, run by Rabbi Steve Nathan, we occasionally partner with. We are a little bit different in the sense that we are an academic organization. Certainly there's overlap. So when I teach Jews and Food, the only practical place to do the cooking for that is at Hillel because there just aren't a lot of kitchens that I can use on campus. Sodexo will not let me use it. So we do partner with them from time to time. In practice, we have slightly different missions because we are very much about the academic study of Judaism, right? What are we going to learn when we're really looking hard at history of primary sources? And sometimes that's going to be something that makes us feel happy and good. And sometimes it's going to be hard, and it's going to be histories that we don't always love, that don't always make us feel great about our history if we are Jewish. And it's also actually Hillel's wonderful in the sense that they are open to all students. Everyone's always welcome at Shabbat dinner. But Jewish Studies too is really not just for Jewish students, even though obviously as a Jewish studies major, as an undergraduate, would be lying if I didn't say I was curious about my own heritage. I was. But we're an academic unit, whereas Hillel does advocacy and other things that it wouldn't be appropriate for scholars to do because we're doing academic work.
Wonderful. And Joe mentions, so Joe grew up next door to the Bermans and was curious if their daughter is still involved at all in their philanthropy. I'm not sure how that relates to, well, I do know how it relates, but I'm not sure, in terms of my own experience of the involvement of their philanthropy. But Jody, do you know if their daughter or their family is still involved in the endowment of the center or other philanthropic interests that they may have?
I don't think it'd be right for me to speak for Nancy Berman. I know that she's, still, keeps track of what's going on at the center, is still very supportive of the arts at Lehigh, so I haven't personally met her since I've been director, but I've been director since July 2023, and there was a pandemic right before that. So I know that the previous director did meet with her. So that's all I really know. It wouldn't be right for me to comment on her behalf.
Gotcha. All right. So a couple other questions to dig into. Um, let's see. So what is there in terms of, upcoming research, I mean, or programming initiatives that you're really excited for? I know that you mentioned the upcoming events that you just listed previously in the presentation, but is there any other kind of research or topics that you're, digging into at the moment or that you're excited to share further with your students and with the community?
Well, I think there's a lot of areas. There are things that we're already doing, that some of us are already working on in our research, and then things where we hope that maybe we can develop programs, and some of that does, of course, depend on resources. Lehigh has a real interest in health and technology. And so we already have, one class that cross-lists with our health medicine and society department. We'd love to do more in the future, looking at the intersection of Jews, health, bioethics, wellness, and all of those related fields. There's quite a lot there, both in terms of teaching and research. All of our current professors have a lot of great research going on. So, for example, Professor Leibovitz's book on time just came out, and I know we have a symposium on political theology at the University of Bologna coming up this summer. So there should be some great publications coming out of that, really reflecting on Jewish studies and Jewish thought, with a large number of people from around the world. Personally, I'm beginning archival work on Emily Solis Cohn, who was a Philadelphian, and she was a children's book author and very involved as well in the arts. She actually created puppet shows and plays for early to mid 20th century Jews, and was involved in interfaith work as well. And so I'm looking forward to expanding that research. And, for students, we're going to keep bringing more programming. So I'm talking to one friend about some music programming for next year. Hopefully I can't talk about stuff we haven't got the contracts yet, but we're looking into some more music programming for next year. And there's a lot of exciting stuff happening at Princeton, NYU, and other centers where we're hoping, to work with some of the professors there and bring some really exciting people here.
Wonderful. So we still have a few minutes remaining, guys. Any questions that you have, feel free to send those in. Otherwise, we will keep kind of chugging things along. So with a number of our looks like we've got a couple of people that are jumping in now. So Boaz says, "Happy 10 years anniversary, Judy. Can't avoid noticing Thor's hammer on one of the stacked shelves. Thanks for the plug for the library's special collections. Which areas in your mind are potentially growth areas for the center as you see it do you see it becoming more of a space, for example?" So I'm not sure if he's talking about just the expansion of the programming or if it's an actual dedicated, building or location on campus.
Yeah, I think we have such amazing people here. I think that in my dream world, we would have a greater representation of both global and US Jewish diversity on our faculty, right? So we don't have anyone right now, for example, who specializes in the study of Sephardic Jews or Jews of North Africa and the Middle East, both of which are just enormous, amazing, important fields in Jewish studies. So, my dream would be to have postdocs or faculty, in some of those areas. In addition to things like health and technology as well. Really, the sky's the limit in terms of the areas we intersect with. Space is cool. It would be cool to have our own space, but space is very expensive. If someone just dropped a lot of money in my lap, I'm looking around, waiting for that to happen. I'm kidding. I would rather spend it on people than on space, because people bring ideas and conversation. But that's one area. And I think students have been really passionate about the arts. They've really enjoyed the arts programs. So I think we would continue to do more with that. And we would look into more experiential learning, which has also been really great. That's why the food class and Professor Lachter taking those printed scrolls into his Jewish mysticism class the next day, having students look at them, right? That kind of learning we'd be investing more in.
Yeah, and in a number of conversations that I've had with faculty members across campus, there's been a really strong emphasis on that experiential component. And that's actually kind of, I think, leads into a nice segue into Susan's question around kind of what's the student population of the program look like? How many students are involved with the center? And, between that and then how many courses are offered to students each semester?
So number of courses per semester, if you're including Hebrew, you're looking at between 4 and 8 courses a semester. I realize that's huge variation. That depends on which professors are either doing administrative work or teaching a class that's not cross-listed. But on average, 6 classes a semester. That's a solid average. Right now, I have 90 students in my 2 cross-listed classes. I'd have to do the math on everyone else's, but I'd say right now, ballpark 150 students at Lehigh are taking some kind of Jewish studies class. Are those all Jewish studies minors? No. Many of those are students taking the classes to fulfill their requirements. So ballpark at this second, 150 students at least are enrolled in some kind of Jewish studies class. We have our number of minors hovers between 16 and 20, which is pretty strong actually right now. And our minors do come from all of the different colleges. So some come from business, some come from engineering, some come from arts and sciences. And so, we've actually grown in minors in the last couple of years and would love to continue to grow. So that's the numbers right now.
Lovely. Yeah, Susan was mentioning that I guess back in 1985, there were only 10 students that were involved with the center originally. So obviously it's grown quite substantially since then, which is what we're hoping for and is very exciting to see. So kind of one more question that I have, and then if there's any other final questions, we got a few more minutes remaining. So with our being in the alumni relations office and trying to think about different ways that we can engage alumni in their various interests and connections to the university, what are some ways that alums can engage with the center, that they can support the center, and in what ways would you like to see that involvement grow?
Okay, so this is the part where I'm gonna ask you to bear with me while I share some things in the chat. One thing alums can do, first of all, is share your memories. So as part of our 40th anniversary, we are collecting memories and creating an oral history. So that's easy, very easy to do. We've got a Google form for it. Another way is to sign up for our email list. So I'll share a link as well to our website, and on several of our website pages, there's a place where it says you can sign up for our email list. We're starting our quarterly newsletter back up. I just restarted it about a week ago. And so we promise we won't spam you, but it means that you'll get a newsletter from us about 4 times a year, and you'll get notice of upcoming events. So you'll know what's happening. That's a great way to support us. Yes, you can give to the Berman Center, which that link is included on our website as well, and available through alumni relations. So that's of course always welcome. But the two biggest things really actually are to participate, to share your memories, and to tell people about our programs, to tell other alums who weren't here today, to tell their kids and their grandkids to take a look at Lehigh when they're looking at colleges, to tell people in the Lehigh Valley to come to our great programs. So really word of mouth and sharing what we do is one of the most important things. By far, that's the biggest thing, is people, because we really believe in bringing people together to learn together. That's the model.
Wonderful. And that brings us pretty close to time. One plug that I do want to include as well. About a month away, we are out from our Giving Day and March Mania. So if anybody is thinking about making a financial contribution or donation to the university or to the Berman Center, we will be having a lot of communication that's coming out over the next couple of weeks as reminders. And there's a lot of opportunities and ways to give to the Berman Center as well as to other initiatives around Lehigh's campus. So with that, I do want to thank everybody for joining us today, taking the time out of your lunch hour to come hear about some of the updates and some of the celebration and history of the Berman Center. Thank you to Jodi for giving us this wonderful presentation and allowing me an opportunity to interview you. If there are any questions, Jodi, if anybody wants to reach out or connect with you, what's the best way to do that? Is it through the forum or maybe some direct outreach to your professional email?
Yeah, I'll just pop my email right into the chat. It's joe315@lehigh.edu. Feel free to email me. Don't panic if it takes me a little bit of time to get back. I get a pretty high volume of email, but please do feel free to reach out. So I'm always available, except for part of the weekend. And yeah, I'm really just delighted that you all took the time out of your day to be here, or to watch this later on YouTube. And thrilled to be talking.
Yeah, absolutely. So one last thing for everybody. So tomorrow there will be a follow-up email that will go out with a link to a survey around the topic presentation today. If you could just take a couple of minutes to fill that out so that way we can get some feedback from you guys about your experience viewing today. That's very helpful for us in planning future programming. So with that, thank you everyone. I really appreciate you taking the time, and we will see you guys all in the next one. Have a wonderful day.